Before we dive into everything that has been unfolding around the Golden State Warriors, let's set the scene for what this matchup truly represents. The team finally strung together a stretch of home games that brought a bit of stability, something that felt long overdue after weeks of inconsistency. And while it is always great to rack up wins against teams you are expected to beat, tonight brings a challenge that feels different, even with all the absences on the other side. The Houston Rockets are arriving extremely short-handed, practically stripped of half their rotation, and that alone already shifts the energy of this matchup in a way that the Warriors absolutely must take advantage of. When you hear names like Kevin Durant, Steven Adams, Tari Eason, and Dorian Finney-Smith all unavailable, it is impossible not to recognize the opportunity laid right in front of Golden State. Without that combination of size, defensive versatility, and shot creation, Houston is nowhere near the same team the Warriors have struggled to handle recently. The absence of a big-bodied anchor like Steven Adams matters a lot more than it seems at first glance, especially for a Warriors squad still trying to build consistency in the frontcourt. With a roster stretched thin and a limited number of true interior presences available, it places another huge spotlight on Quinn Post. Every night feels like a new challenge for him, and this one might be the kind that either accelerates his development or exposes the areas where he still has to grow. But the encouraging part is that Houston no longer has that two-headed monster of 7-footers clogging the paint and disrupting every drive. That gives Post more space to create, to stretch the floor, to force their interior defenders to come away from the rim and open up the lanes that players like Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Moses Moody, and Brandon Podziemski thrive in. That alone could become one of the strategic advantages Golden State leans on heavily throughout the night. Now, of course, the uncertainties hovering over this lineup continue to complicate things. Draymond Green remains a game-time decision, and while fans have learned not to expect much from Alex Toure just yet, his availability, or lack of it, still influences the rotation patterns. There is also the lingering frustration around Al Horford's continued absence, which adds another wrinkle to the puzzle the coaching staff is trying to solve. Jonathan Kuminga remains out as well, and the silence around De'Anthony Melton's situation has become a storyline of its own. Even with all of this, though, there's a real sense that if the Warriors start quickly, if they impose themselves in the opening minutes instead of trying to claw back later, they can seize control and never let go. Looking at the last 10 games paints a picture fans are already familiar with. Golden State split that stretch right down the middle, 5 wins and 5 losses, while the Rockets put together an impressive run with 8 wins and only 2 losses. That gap immediately raises questions about momentum, energy, and what kind of rhythm each team is truly in right now. But momentum shifts quickly in the league, and tonight's circumstances tilt the balance strongly in Golden State's favor. With Kevin Durant unavailable, Houston loses its primary shot creator, the guy who bends defenses and controls tempo. And that means Stephen Curry has a chance to grab this game and dictate the pace before Houston finds alternate answers. Speaking of Curry, the matchup that never fails to generate noise is the one involving him and Amen Thompson. Anyone who remembers that first-round playoff series knows how relentless Thompson was, especially in that decisive 7th game. He chased Curry everywhere, never giving him an inch, almost glued to him on every screen and every relocation. It was suffocating to watch, and yet Curry still found ways to deliver, because that is what generational players do. But the memory of how difficult it was for him to get clean touches in that series lingers, and the Warriors absolutely need to ensure he does not get bogged down the same way again. That is where the team effort comes in. Curry can produce brilliance, but he is at his most dangerous when the offense around him is flowing, when screens hit hard, when cuts are sharp, when the ball finds the open man without hesitation. Add to all this the fact that this is an NBA Cup game and things take on an extra layer of atmosphere, at least in theory. There is still a lot of debate among fans about what this tournament truly means or whether it actually enhances the experience of watching early season basketball. Many see it as an attempt to replicate the excitement that soccer leagues generate with domestic cups or the tradition behind the President's Trophy in hockey. But the connection is not fully there yet. The elaborate courts, the special markings, the alternate energy, sometimes it feels more like a visual experiment than something that changes the emotional stakes. Some fans enjoy the novelty, while others feel like it is simply another game with extra decorations. Still, whether fans embrace the NBA Cup or not, the players have their own motivations. Many of them talk about pride, about competing, about adding intensity to games that sometimes lack urgency in the earlier months of the season. And yes, there is the immediate financial incentive that players often mention. But at the end of the day, Golden State has to treat this like another chance to build rhythm. The team thrives when there is purpose, when there is something to rally around. A game against a short-handed Rockets squad in a tournament setting could be the perfect opportunity to spark that internal momentum. Now, shifting things back to roster-building conversations, the comments have been full of trade ideas, and one that recently caught attention was the suggestion of trying to acquire Kel'el Ware. It is an intriguing proposal, considering what he brings as an athletic, growing center who rebounds well and protects the paint with energy. But the current situation makes that trade far more complicated than it appears at first glance. Ware is part of an organization built on developing talent into reliable contributors, and Miami has built a decades-long reputation for taking late selections, overlooked players, and unrefined prospects and molding them into steady, impactful pieces. Where leading them in rebounds is exactly the type of growth that front offices like theirs tend to value heavily. The question then becomes whether the Miami front office would consider moving a young, cost-controlled asset when their recent history shows they rarely part with developing players unless the return aligns perfectly with their long-term structure. They prioritize financial flexibility, they make calculated decisions, and they plan years in advance. That alone complicates any scenario involving Ware. And then comes the possibility, often whispered but not impossible, that a different player, someone like Bam Adebayo, might eventually become a more realistic target for Golden State once the league calendar allows certain contracts to become trade eligible. The Warriors have always considered finding a center who can battle with the larger bodies across the league, someone physical enough to handle the demands of postseason matchups. Adebayo fits that mold on both ends of the floor. Even if that idea is enticing, the Warriors cannot afford to get distracted by dreams of January trades or blockbuster opportunities. They're still working their way back to full strength, still figuring out rotations, still learning what combinations work best. With so many players in and out of the lineup, every game becomes another chance to test resilience. And while they continue to hold their ground, stealing wins when necessary and staying competitive even through uneven stretches, there is always the sense that once their full roster returns, their ceiling becomes much clearer. Tonight's matchup with Houston might be the kind that reminds everyone what this team can be when they embrace urgency and execute early, especially with such a clear path to take control from the opening tip. And as the Warriors get ready for this meeting with Houston, the conversation naturally shifts toward how this team intends to manage the delicate balance between competing in the moment and planning for the future. It is impossible to ignore how much the constant shuffle of injuries, absences, and shifting rotations has shaped the rhythm of this season. Every time it feels like a steady lineup is forming, another setback forces the coaching staff to rebuild the structure from scratch. That constant instability makes games like tonight even more important because they serve as a measuring stick, showing whether the Warriors have truly established an identity strong enough to withstand the turbulence that keeps resurfacing. What Golden State needs most is continuity, and even if they cannot get it through a healthy roster quite yet, they can create it through effort, discipline, and execution. The challenge becomes even more pronounced when considering how the Rockets like to play. Even without their key names, Houston thrives on pace, athleticism, and physicality. They swarm defensively, they pressure ball handlers, and they attack the paint with confidence. This is the kind of team that punishes you for slow starts, careless turnovers, or stretches of complacency. Golden State has had nights this season where the offense looks brilliant, but the carelessness creeps in and allows opponents to go on those 10, 12, or 14-point runs that erase all previous momentum. Those are the moments that define whether the Warriors can truly evolve into a more consistent unit. And against a young Rocket squad, that discipline will matter more than ever. What makes Houston dangerous, even shorthanded, is the way they commit to their identity. They play with an energy that does not fluctuate based on who is missing or who is available. They press, they crash the boards, they take advantage of size mismatches, and they lean into their young core's hunger to prove themselves. So while the Warriors on paper have the clear advantage, it will only matter if they match that intensity from the opening tip. Stephen Curry will need openings. Klay Thompson will need rhythm. Draymond Green, if he plays, will need to orchestrate the defensive tone. And the supporting cast cannot afford to disappear into the background. Golden State has the roster intelligence to expose Houston's weaknesses if they stay patient and smart with their decision-making. Now, focusing again on roster construction, the idea of making upgrades in the middle is not something the Warriors can simply ignore. As the season goes deeper and the stakes rise, the value of having a reliable interior presence becomes more apparent. Whether it is on the glass, protecting the paint, or setting strong screens, that area has been a recurring problem. And every time the team faces an opponent with a physically dominant big man, it becomes clear that relying solely on smaller defenders and clever rotations is not always enough. That is why names like Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo keep surfacing in conversations among fans, analysts, and even quiet front office discussions. But the Miami situation shows how complex these possibilities really are. Miami does not operate impulsively. Their track record over the past 3 decades has earned them a reputation for making precise, calculated roster decisions. Their ability to turn undervalued players into assets makes them protective of the pieces they develop. Where his contract is friendly, his production is rising, and he fits the mold of a future foundational piece. That combination makes him extremely unlikely to be moved unless an overwhelming offer forces Miami to reconsider. And overwhelming is not a word used lightly. It takes a significant package to convince that organization to part with a young player they believe can contribute to sustained long-term success. And then there's the more intriguing question involving Adebayo. His skill set perfectly complements what the Warriors lack: interior versatility, defensive reliability, and strong playmaking from the high post. If Golden State continues to embrace a smaller, movement-heavy offense, adding someone like Adebayo could elevate everything around Curry, Thompson, and the younger core. He screens hard, passes well, rotates defensively with intelligence, and brings an edge that meshes naturally with players like Draymond Green. The issue, of course, is timing. Contract eligibility rules prevent certain deals until mid-January, and the Warriors cannot afford to pause their season's development while waiting for a potential possibility that may or may not materialize. In the meantime, the coaching staff has no choice but to emphasize internal growth. That is where players like Brandon Podziemski, Moses Moody, Quentin Post, and even the deeper bench pieces become invaluable. Each of them provides something unique, and their development will determine how stable the Warriors become as the season intensifies. Podziemski's court vision, Moody's poise, post size, and shooting potential. These are the qualities that will determine how well Golden State survives stretches without full health. And with Jonathan Kuminga still unavailable, the team needs every ounce of contribution from its young guys to stay afloat. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. Chaos seems to be sweeping through the league as fans and insiders alike are questioning the integrity of the competition. Rumors are flying after the shocking revelation that the Warriors have somehow been awarded points without even stepping onto the court. Yes, you read that right. Points awarded, no game played. The implications are sending shockwaves across the sports world, with rival teams openly calling foul play and demanding explanations. Sources close to the league suggest that the decision was made under unusual circumstances, though official statements remain vague and cryptic. Social media is ablaze with speculation, with fans alternating between outrage and disbelief. "It's a joke," one rival supporter tweeted. "How can a team gain points without proving themselves in the game? It's a disgrace to the sport." Others are even calling it a potential scandal that could tarnish the league's reputation for years to come. Insiders hint that this could be linked to administrative errors or behind-the-scenes negotiations, but nothing has been confirmed. Meanwhile, the Warriors camp is staying tight-lipped, refusing to comment beyond a brief acknowledgement that the points are on the board. This silence has only fueled the fire, prompting conspiracy theories that range from favoritism to outright manipulation. Sports analysts are already weighing in, debating how this could affect playoff standings, team morale, and fan trust. For the players of the rival teams, frustration is palpable. Many feel that the fairness of the league is being undermined, and some suggest protests or official complaints are imminent. Meanwhile, the general public is torn between disbelief and fascination, following every new post, tweet, and statement for clues. As the situation unfolds, one thing is certain. The buzz is unstoppable, and the Warriors' unearned points have become the talk of every locker room, sports bar, and social media feed across the country. Whatever the truth behind the decision, the league now faces the challenge of calming an uproar that shows no signs of slowing down. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.